Hello, Create Schools. Today we're going to talk about the second case study, how secure was the USSR control over Eastern Europe, and we're going to look at the case study of Czechoslovakia in 1968. I'd like you to keep in mind the events that happened in Hungary in 1956, because the next segment we're going to look at compare and contrast Hungary and Czechoslovakia. So go ahead and get your paper and pen out and write these notes down. Okay, the first thing I want to point out is why was the reasons for opposition to the Soviet control? And just like in Hungary, just like we said in the introduction video, the communication was very restrictive. There was censorship, lack of freedom of speech, secret police. Basically, you could not say what you wanted to say. You could not write what you wanted to write. You could not read what you wanted to read. And there was secret police all over making sure that you don't do that. The economy was struggling. The standard of living was very low. Remember, things that were made in Czechoslovakia, they were all being most of them were being exported to the Soviet Union to make their standard of living better. To keep in mind, in the Soviet Union, the economy was struggling and the standard of living was also low there. Okay. A lot of the things that they made in the industries, again, were weapons and things to support the Soviet Union's struggle against America. And then enters Dubček, right here. What's his name? Dubček. And he has some different ideas. He said, okay, let's change this a little bit and make things slightly different. So pause here and write these things down. Please do write his name down, although we will also write it in another time. So he is your president, or the person in charge of Czechoslovakia, Dubček. Okay, Dubček has this idea. It's called the Prauge Spring, or it becomes called the Prauge Spring later, and he says we need socialism with a human face. So he says we need to actually be able to see people, hear people, feel people. Okay, Dubček, so here it is written again, who was the president at the time of Czechoslovakia. He was a communist leader who did believe in all the communist things, but he believed that it didn't have to be so restrictive. Okay, so he got rid of censorship. He abolished censorship. He said, okay, you can print what you want. He gave freedom of speech. He said, okay, you can criticize the government if you want. And he made a workers' council and increased the rights of trade union. And I will go over later what a trade union is, but just to be really short on it was the unions, or the group of people that made sure everything was good for the people that are working jobs. We'll explain that later in the fourth case study. So the Workers' Council is basically, they're just making sure that all the workers groups were representative and that things were going well. And there became some freedom of movement. So when you first see freedom of movement, you're like, okay, that doesn't make sense, because of course we have freedom of movement, although right now we don't have a lot of movement during Corona time. But they didn't have the ability to move to leave Czechoslovakia. Some people could get a special permission to go into Russia, but they really were not allowed to move around. In fact, they couldn't move to go to any Eastern European countries. So the movement, they really had to basically stay where they are. Now, one thing that's very different, they did not want to leave the Warsaw Pact. They thought, we remember everything was fine in Hungary, and then Hungary said they wanted to leave the Warsaw Pact, yet we don't want to do that. We're happy to stay communist. We're happy to be in the Warsaw Pact. We just want people to have more rights. And actually the idea sounds really, really good. Why can't people have rights under communism? As we have generally discussed and thought about, communism itself, the principle, the ideas of communism is not bad. Working together, helping people, doing good, but the way that it was done with all of these loss of freedoms, loss of rights, was not good. And so if we just give the people their rights back, allow them to vote, allow them to say what they want to say, everyone should be really happy. In fact, let's go ahead and start a new party, a new political party. And so Dubček starts the Social Democratic Party. It's like, okay, we're still communists, we just want to be more social social as in caring about the people, but caring about the people's rights. Okay, and so here we've got a little political cartoon, little foreshadowing what's going to happen. We've got Russia and a tank, and here we've got this, I believe, is representing Dubček, and he's sticking a flower right here in the thing. So like I say, it's a little bit of foreshadowing. So Dubček was pretty secure that everything was going to work because, he's not leaving the Warsaw Pact. They're looking at Hungary, seeing what the model was, and saying, okay, it should be fine. So pause here, write this down. Two things to make sure you memorize. This is called the Prauge Spring. Spring as in Frühling. Okay, so what happens during the springtime? Flowers bloom, people wake up, everything's better, and that's kind of what they're thinking that this is going to be like with the abolition. So it means get rid of censorship and have more freedom of speech. The whole country's just going to wake up like a blooming flower, and everyone's going to be happy. It's the socialism is people taking care of themselves. The human face, meaning we care about the individual people. Okay, so now pause the video if you hadn't already paused it to take these notes down. Okay, so what happens is this guy right here, 1964, Brezhnev takes over. So when this happens in 68, Brezhnev had been in power for 4 years, so that's actually quite a long time. And he told Dubček, you know what? I'm not really sure I'm liking these reforms. So you need to stop. And so he was worried again that it's the same thing. It's still this domino effect, even though we're talking about a different reason of dominoes, that, if one Eastern European country becomes a little more liberal, a little more socialistic, other ones might be doing that as well. So he said, stop. I don't really want you to do all these reforms. I'm a little worried, definitely worried about this new political system or new political party that you're talking about. Communism is the way to go. No social democrat party. So Brezhnev starts training, training his military on the border of Czechoslovakia. That's a very normal technique that people used to basically threaten people. So they weren't actually invading Czechoslovakia. They were just going to the border outside of Czechoslovakia, probably in Poland, and they start training their soldiers, and they bring all of their military, and they're like, oh, no, it's not war. We're not invading you. We're just training them. Okay, so Dubček says, okay, I'll agree, the political parties, the new Social Democrat Party might have been a little overboard, but, can we keep the reforms? The no censorship, allowing freedom of speech. And so he said, okay, is that okay? And basically Brezhnev said no. So in August, once the spring, very funny, August is when a lot of things die because it gets really hot. So after this lovely Prague spring of everything blooming in the August heat, fighting breaks out. So it's not nearly as bad as Hungary. The Czechoslovakian people actually didn't fight. Dubček said, do not fight back. And that's where the one picture I showed before, this one right here, with people putting flowers into tanks, or they also gave flowers to soldiers, and basically they just stood there and quietly protested without getting killed, putting flowers and giving flowers to people. So although with that said, here's a little bit of fighting right here. So Dubček again was removed from power, and he was taken to Moscow. He was not killed like Nagy, but it was a big symbol saying, okay, this is not going to happen. So I also have this is a street cartoon that was drawn in Czechoslovakia. In 1945, the Czech people are bringing the Soviet soldiers flowers and saying, thank you for helping us, everything's good. 68, same person shot dead in the street. Okay, so let's pause the video here and write all of these down. And I'll go on to the next slide. So the outcome, a new person was put in charge, Kadar. There was 35,000 people arrested and 300 people killed. That is the exact same number as Hungary. So I need to look at that because that does not make sense. I'll let you know in class, or have to remake a whole new video. Okay, so anyway, Dubček was not killed, but he was downgraded. So he became first an ambassador to Turkey, then totally expelled from the Communist Party. And funny thing is, his pictures were censored out a lot of the archives. So a lot of the pictures of him in political meetings with people were censored out, and suddenly he's like not even there. So Czechoslovakia's mood changed, and under Dubček there was optimistic, and afterwards they were very resentful. So I'll check on those numbers because, like I say, those are the exact same numbers that were in Hungary. So I have to see if those are right. I will put an addendum at the end of this video. Just look in the notes and I will put the correct answer for you, or I'll let you know that the numbers are correct. Okay, have a good day. If you have any questions besides that, let me know.